to him. So in verse 21 it says, "And the Lord caused a deep sleep to fall on Adam, and he slept, and he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh in its place. Then the rib which the Lord God had taken from the man, he made into a woman, and he brought her to the man. And Adam said, 'This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife,'" in verse 24. "They shall become one flesh." So not only did God create us to be perfectly one with him, but he also says that we are created in a way that we are to become with our spouses. And this is just for those who are not married, or think that this sermon is only for people who are married. But it says, "And the glory," John 17:22-23, "And the glory which you gave me, I have given them, that they may be one, just as we are one." This is Jesus praying. "And I in them, and you in me, that they may be perfect in one, that the world may know that you have sent me, and have loved them as you have loved me." So if you're not married, you can understand that this model that I'm talking about is based on relationships. You're not just one with God. You're supposed to be one with everybody. It's like anybody who's a believer, really, we should be fitting together. It's like we should be one. It's like God wanted us to be one as he is one. It's like, and although we are many, it's like we can still have this oneness. So it can affect, you can be one with your friends, your co-workers, your church members, your children, or any family member. God made us in a way that we are all able to be one with each other. Okay. But then life happens. Okay. And events happen that begin to take that perfect image that God created and begins cutting into it. Sometimes, so here we got on this side. Love it. It's like, here we got like different things that could have happened in our life. It's like things like, say like physical abuse. It's like, here we got this perfect image, and yet somebody else starts to write their image over us. Maybe it's not always you, it could be somebody else. It's like somebody takes this hammer and a chisel into our lives, and they start building in our lives or destroying the image that God created. It's like physical abuse would do that. Emotional and psychological abuse, being told how worthless you are, how stupid you are. It's like, being beat down every day, not just only with your fists, but with your words. And it's like starts cutting into this image that God created for us, and all of a sudden it's like we're like, what is going on? And sometimes it's like, somebody, maybe there was a death in your family and it cuts into your life, or maybe it was like somebody had an affair and it cuts into your life, or somebody left you and divorced you and it cuts into your life, loss of your home or your finances, and you get cut in your life, and it's just like you've got all these things that are messed up. What God created you to be now, it's like you no longer see that. Sometimes it's us that takes that image of God, that wonderful, beautiful creature that God has created, said you're perfect, you're fearfully, wonderfully made, there's not a single mistake about you. It's like, you are very good. And we start cutting into our lives, it's like, because we start getting involved in things like sex before marriage, like lying or stealing or unforgiveness, and getting involved in anything that hurts us, such as drugs, alcohol, or overeating. It's like, whatever the addiction is, it's like we're destroying this image. It's like we think we're worthless. We believe it ourselves, it's like, and so by the things that we take part of, the sinful things that we take part of, we were never created for that. We were created for holiness. We were created for righteousness. And yet we start writing our own story, our own desires, and we start living whatever we want. I don't have to obey my parents. I don't have to honor anybody. I don't have to love anybody. I can do whatever I want, whether God likes it or not. And so it's like, all of a sudden, it's like, what was so perfectly fitting together, it no longer fits. So we're going to talk. Elton and I are going to talk. This is where we're going to talk. You want to go? So we were talking about, like, what are some areas in our life that began to cut into our lives? Like, what were some of the problems that we brought into our marriage? And so for me, the number one thing that I remember bringing into our marriage was fear. It's like I brought in fear. I was fearful that he was gonna be the typical whiny guy that was gonna wind up cheating or being abusive. I had this real strong hatred towards lying. So it was like I didn't want to marry somebody who was going to be lying to me, and so I came into this marriage with all these fears because I didn't want to get hurt. I didn't want my heart to break, because you know, it's like when you feel pain, just automatically, like, and just things that happened in my younger life where people let me down, where people lied to me, or people like, you know, it's like said that they were gonna be your friend and then they backstab you and things like that. And it's like, so these walls go up. These walls went up, and so I developed this thing where I wasn't gonna let anybody in, not even close. If you even gave me the hint that it could happen, wall went up, you're out, kind of thing. And that's kind of how I was before I met him, and when I met him, and then even into our marriage, I brought that wonderful things in.
So for me, it's the same thing, it's fear. That I'll be abusive because of my history, my family. I'll be abusive to her and everybody else in the family.
Now why did you pick that?
That's all I seen all my life. From 5 years old, my mom and dad divorced, and all I seen is fighting for the rest of my life.
Why don't you talk about a little bit what kind of abuse you went through as a kid? Or did you want to? Yeah, so it's like, I shared it at one of the other messages, but the kind of stuff that he went through was, like, his uncles, you know, often like to just see him get, you know, wasted, you know, as a young toddler, so they would get him drunk or high, you know, it's like on weed, and just because they like to watch them bang into things. You know, it's like they went through, many of the children in that home went through sexual abuse. They went through psychological abuse, things like saying that, you know, it's like if they behave, they're gonna get to go to Disneyland, but they gotta work really hard and do their best. And so they worked really hard, they tried their best, or he was trying his best to make everybody happy, do the best that he could in school. And so it's like, he comes to the day before Disneyland and he's like just super, super excited, like just like on cloud 9, right? And it's like, he gets his stuff packed and he's like, I've never been off the island. We barely even had money. He never ever had birthday money or anything. It's like he never had like even nice clothes, really. It's like they lived on welfare. They barely even had food, or they didn't know when they were gonna have electricity or water in their home. They lived in a Quonset home, and this, you know, it's like it was chaos. And so here, this idea of Disneyland is like, wow, dream come true. So he's super excited, can't barely go to sleep. He wakes up in the morning just waiting for his auntie to pick them up because she's supposed to take them to the airport. And he's waiting, and he's waiting, and he's waiting, and he's waiting, until he realizes that it was all just a lie. It was all just made up. It's like the psychological games they played with them in that kind of way, like they constantly did things. They weren't allowed to ask questions. It was, you do what I say, when I say. If you were just blocking the TV, a bottle might be flying at your head. It's like they were so abusive. Like they hung him upside down in a tree and they shot him down with a hose and they beat him. It was like, one of the things that we talk about in the schools is how this one uncle would make him drink the spoiled milk that they would pick up for the piggery. And they were supposed to pick it up on the corners, but it had been laid out in the sun, so it was spoiled. And he was like, you either drink this or you get beat. So he'd drink it, but he'd be throwing up all day. And so to this day, he doesn't drink or doesn't like anything like sour cream or anything, can't stand the smell. And so I asked him, I said, why didn't you tell your mom about what your uncles were doing? Because she was always off with some boyfriend. You know, it was like, and she took the daughter, but she left the boys in the care of the 6 uncles and the grandmother. So they were getting majorly abused. I think she knew about the sexual abuse in her family, so she figured take the girl away, didn't think it was gonna happen to the boys, but it did. You know, it's like, so I asked, why didn't you tell your mom? And he said, are you kidding me? My brother tried to tell my parents about the sexual abuse, and my uncles always made like we were the problem. It's like, oh, your sons is such, you know, liars because, you know, they just tried to say that because, you know, we got them in trouble, or we gave them lickings for this, you know, because they never come home in time because they wasn't doing their job or whatever, and twisted it and turned it on them and said, it's like, that's the only reason why he's saying that kind of stuff. And they believed them, and so that brother got beat by the mom, the grandma, and all the uncles down the line. Got beat so bad that they all came together, all the kids came back together, and they said, we're never gonna tell anybody again. We'll never tell. And so he said, even when they told him about the lickings, it was like the same thing would happen. So it was like they wind up getting beaten by more people. It was better just to take the beatings from one, or the having to throw up, than to have everybody, you know, against you.
The other fear that I bought into is losing my family, losing my wife, divorce, true divorce, is I seen almost all my uncles, my mom, my grandmother, everybody been divorced. And I seen how it tears the family apart completely. That was, it's a lot of hard times. And dying early. I was radical. I always speed, always did a lot of crazy stuff. And I was scared to leave her with everything by herself.
And so these fears that came into our marriage would cause us to act in ways that were not so loving. Whenever you came across one of our fears, if you brushed up against it and you touched it, you pushed on it, it would just cause walls to come up. And so one of the things that for me that I brought in was this controlling attitude. You know, it's like it got so bad that it was like if he didn't even want to watch the same movie that I wanted to watch, I was gonna leave him. It's like the walls would shoot up, and I'd be like, I'd say the most mean things. I was like really cruel in the beginning of our marriages. I was like, I hate you, I wish I never married you. I even got as far as to saying, like, because when that stopped working, right, when that stopped like getting a response, I said things like, I'm gonna leave you. I was like, I'm gonna, you know, I was like, go and have an affair right now. You know, stupid stuff just to hurt him. You know, it's like, and because I was like, you're not gonna hurt me. It's like, if you hurt me even a little bit, I'll hurt you more. It's like, and so it was like really like a, talk about battleground. We were in a battleground and we were not on the same team. So, go ahead.
So with that, for me, it's kind of hard in myself from her. Try not to have a conversation because it might turn into a...
And we argued every day in the beginning of our relationship. I'd be like missing him, like, oh, I can't wait till he comes home. And the minute he came home, I was just raging. I was just so angry, like just flipped like that. And he was like, he thought I belonged to Kahimuhala for a while.
So the other thing that I bought in is lying. I could not tell the truth, even though I get caught. Because I was trained as a child. If you go and rob or steal from somebody and they see you, and they bring you home, and they tell your parents, you better not admit to it. Because you admit to it, you will get lickings for it, and then more lickings for it, and then more lickings. You lie until they leave you alone.
I don't know what that was, but yeah, we dealt with a lot of lying, which caused a lot of frustration on my part. One of the things that I brought into our marriage in the beginning was laziness. I just, you know, I was upset that he wasn't wanting to be helpful in the house, and so I wanted. It was more like, it's like, hey, aren't you supposed to be like serving me? Aren't you supposed to be helping me? It was like, so that caused a lot of anger and a lot of frustration.
For me, I was trained to work outside, not clean house, not wash dishes. And I wasn't trained to cook dinner. I wasn't. If we ever got close to any of that, we would get lickings for it. It's just because this is my territory, the woman in the house. So my mom, since the divorce, my mom was Catholic. Grandma was right next to me. Auntie was right below. You cannot deal with that three ladies in one.